Hello, Griot fam. Welcome to The Hill with April Ryan. So much has happened this week, so let's get right to it and discuss. My top story of the week comes from the White House briefing room and a question I asked the Biden White House about the Black agenda, an agenda that many in the Black community believes has fallen along the wayside. The question stemmed from a conversation I had with legendary and iconic entertainer and civil rights activist Stevie Wonder, who you'll remember has a long history of civil rights work, from pushing for the MLK federal holiday to fighting apartheid in South Africa. I had an in-depth conversation with Stevie Wonder last night, who is...
I love Stevie Wonder.
Again, for the serious question, is the White House amenable to sitting down with Stevie Wonder, who has met with presidents throughout history, to include Ronald Reagan? He was one of the major impetus for getting the holiday for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And also he was one of those who worked with President Obama in his efforts to become president.
Can I just say a couple things about Stevie Wonder? He is indeed an icon who's made tremendous contributions to the civil rights movement and also voting rights. And as you just listed out, he was one of the main voices in getting Dr. Martin Luther King Day. And we appreciate that. We appreciate his brilliance, and we appreciate what he's been able to do on behalf of the community. So I can't, as far as a meeting with the president, certainly I'm not aware of any meetings with Mr. Wonder or any scheduled meetings, and I don't have anything to announce, obviously, at this time. But I also want to say that on the president's first day in this administration, he has taken this very seriously as it relates to what we're seeing, right, as it relates to racial inequality. He called it one of the four major crises that we have to deal with as a country when he stepped into office.
Former Arkansas Judge Wendell Griffen agrees with Stevie Wonder about pushing issues of voting rights. Griffen talked about the consequences of the recent court decisions, basically gutting what is left of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. The latest decision by the 8th Circuit Court in Arkansas says only state attorney generals can bring potential challenges to the law. Griffen says if you live in a state that does not view voting rights as a priority, your rights could be in jeopardy.
The effect of the decision last week in Arkansas is that it's going to be that much more difficult for the Black voters in the affected district to elect candidates of their choice. They're going to be electing candidates, not the candidates they choose, but candidates that are forced on them because their voting power has been diluted. Instead of people selecting their office holders, the politicians are selecting the voters. And that's the impact. Instead of the voters selecting who the politicians are, the politicians are going to be selecting who the voters are. And if they can pick who votes for them, they can stay in office as long as they want to, because quite frankly, they will decide, I don't want to pick voters who don't share my racial, ethnic identity and my socioeconomic background.
That decision by the 8th Circuit Court is expected to make its way to the U.S. Supreme Court. There is a familiar name and face looking to become a judge in Los Angeles County. Former prosecutor Christopher Darden came to fame during the O.J. Simpson murder trial in 1995. Now is hoping to be elected to the bench in the March 2024 election.
I've always wanted to participate. I always wanted to make a difference, in the lives of the people that I came into contact with. And at this point, given where we are in the criminal justice system, given the reform movement, I think the perfect place for me to make a difference is from the bench.
Darden believes his body of work will make him recognizable on the ballot when it's time to vote. The National Action Network is launching a new health equity and transplantation coalition. They are pushing to get Medicare to cover blood tests that could detect early signs of organ rejection in organ transplant recipients. And they've enlisted the help of hip-hop and R&B superstar Al B. Sure to share their message. The singer received a life-saving liver transplant in the summer of 2022.
We're really trying to provide something to the population, very specifically to the culture, related to equity in testing, equity as it relates to, healthcare, just understanding their mantra at CareDx. And, I said, hey, let's explore this. This may be something great as it relates to not, number one, creating a special space for my family who are actually transplant patients around the world, but also creating equity and inclusion and access, which is most important for this healthcare, and very specifically because it's my plight related to transplantation.
I'll be sure we'll be in Washington, D.C. lobbying federal lawmakers on this transplantation issue next week. Thanks for joining us for this edition of The Hill, where we amplify the news for us and about us. We'll see you next week. Take care. Peace, peace, and peace.